Hey, I'm Summer with Texas Public Radio. I signed my 3 dogs up for pet memberships because they really enjoy the classical music on KPAC 88.3 FM. If you're able to, please donate to TPR at tpr.org. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joey Palacios, local government reporter for Texas Public Radio here in San Antonio. My main responsibility in the TPR newsroom is covering local government. The majority of that includes the San Antonio City Council and also a lot of the Bexar County Commissioners Court. One of the things that I really like to believe is that local government is one of the most important governments in your life, if not the most, because it's the one that's closest to you. I was born and raised here in San Antonio, so everything that happens here within local government is very personal to me too. So I like to make sure that my friends and neighbors and family are very much kept aware of what's happening. I feel blessed and very lucky to be able to tell people every day the things that are happening within their community. Throughout this process in the newsroom, we've adapted to the curveballs that the pandemic has thrown at us. And again, that really just comes with all of the support that our listeners have given us and the patience, and it hasn't interrupted our news at all. Back in March, it felt like everything was just slow motion. I remember kind of waking up every day thinking, okay, well, what's going to happen now? It was almost like a hurricane we were starting to prepare for it to come ashore, but there really wasn't an end in sight. Being downtown and so close to everything at City Hall gives us this perspective that other news outlets don't necessarily have the opportunity to react as quickly. If something does happen at City Hall, we can get down there within a couple of minutes. And that's really thanks to all of the people who have supported TPR to help us get into this building, and to all the people that continue to support us. We're just a few weeks away from one of the biggest elections this country has ever seen. And although president is right up at the top of the list, U.S. Senator for Texas is right at the top of the list, there's all of these other races on the ballot that are at the micro level of things. The Texas legislature, all of its House seats are going to be up. Some seats in the Texas Senate are going to be up. Every seat in the U.S. House of Representatives is going to be up for grabs. And even further going down that list are the local races. You have the Bexar County Commissioners Court. There's 2 seats that are going to be on that this year that are up for re-election. And in both of those cases, it's going to be a new face on those seats. You also have sales tax propositions that the city of San Antonio has put on there. There's 3 of them that are going to be on, and they're all very complex issues. There's pre-K for essay that's going to be on the ballot. There's the VIA sales tax initiative that'll be on the ballot. And then there's also the City of San Antonio's COVID-19 Workforce Development Program that will be on there. We want to make sure that you are well equipped with the right information, so that way when you're at that ballot box, you feel that you are making the decision that is right for you. We can do that with your help by supporting Texas Public Radio. We are in our pledge drive right now, and you can go online to tpr.org to make your contribution of support there. Through your support and helping TPR, you're helping us make sure that we are up to date with bringing you the information in the way that you want to receive it. Yes, we're Texas Public Radio, but we're online at tpr.org. You can download our app via the Google Play App Store or the Apple App Store, so that way you can digest and get the information the way that you want it. You can stream our broadcast on the app, you can stream our broadcast online, and you can see all of the stories that we have going on through any of our social media accounts. We're here to make sure that you're getting the information that you want in the way that you want it. But again, we can't do that without your help. So you can go online to tpr.org, make your contribution there. You can also call us at 800-622-8977. There'll be a link on this video as well, so that way you can instantly make your contribution there. And there's plenty of ways that you can support us, and we are always thankful when you do.
Hey, I'm Ben. I'm a podcast producer at Texas Public Radio, and these past couple months I've been working on a couple of our new projects. One of those new projects that we've been working on most recently is called The Shakeout, and it's a podcast from our tech reporter Paul Flav about the economic impacts of COVID-19. In it, Paul takes a couple of deep dives into some industries that have just been not just decimated, but like fundamentally changed by the pandemic. He is going and visiting oil fields. You know, oil is huge in Texas, and there are all these small producers that maybe just don't have a future, you know. He has been spending a ton of time reporting on the incredible rise in hunger in Texas. And so, you know, Paul is just out there talking with people, trying to get a sense, trying to take stock of all of what's changed economically due to COVID-19.
Nowhere is the economic damage from the pandemic felt more, but seen less, than on the kitchen tables across the United States. Here in Texas, the number of people unable to feed themselves regularly doubled since the pandemic began. Some have even called it Great Depression levels of need. And I know what you're thinking. There's no way this could be true. Obviously, if this hunger thing were so dramatically terrible, I would have seen it. If 2020 weren't the menagerie of disasters it's turned out to be, that might be the case. But somewhere between the initial stories about record-setting unemployment, police killing George Floyd along with the Black Lives Matter protests, and more than 200,000 Americans dying from COVID-19, this story sort of got lost. In Texas, the number's more than 1 in 10. 1 in 10 people who needed a free meal or groceries in the past 7 days.
Started a podcast with our bioscience and medicine reporter, Bonnie Petrie, and that podcast is called Petri Dish. Been asking ourselves, what are the kind of big stories we want to tell about the coronavirus, and what are the big questions that our community has that we need answers for? The big questions were medical in nature. They were, how do you get the coronavirus? You know, what are the risks? What happens to you? What happens to your body when you get the coronavirus? What is safe to do and what's not safe to do?
So the flu is a dangerous disease, and COVID has killed nearly 190,000 Americans since the first death was reported in Washington state in February. Put the two together, and we have the potential for an unimaginable health crisis. We'll talk about that and how we can all help prevent it. Let's get back to Connery. He's preparing for the worst case scenario, a bad flu season and a COVID surge in Montana, because asthma puts him at risk for severe disease if he becomes infected with either virus. Right now, his asthma is well controlled. He uses an inhaler once a day.
Over the years, we've had to really tinker with his maintenance regimen to make sure that he stays healthy. And we've had a lot of challenges, although it's very well controlled now, knock on wood. But it's something that we have to keep a constant eye on, for sure.
Either COVID or the flu, or God forbid both, could cause him real problems.
Another podcast that TPR is going to be publishing pretty soon is Worth Repeating, which is something that a lot of listeners might already know about. It's this storytelling series where people from San Antonio tell a short story about their lives. And that has in the past been a live event. Obviously now they're not, we can't all come into a theater and you know, have these events together. But one of the things we're doing to try to make it more accessible is to make it available as a podcast. So you can hear all of those projects at tpr.org, or you can subscribe to those podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts. As a news organization, there's a lot of different kinds of questions that we have to answer. Some of those questions are best answered in really short stories. Those are the 60-second stories that you'll hear if you turn on the morning news on the radio. Some of those questions are harder, and you don't get to them in 60 seconds. And that's what we try to do in longer form stories, is to try to give people a platform to kind of tell us their whole story, give us their whole fleshed out perspective, and compare perspectives between different people and try to, maybe not resolve problems, but try to really understand, the different sides of an issue. Like everyone, the pandemic changed all of life for us. Producing radio is harder. A big part of what we do is go places and talk to people in person. We've had to get creative with asking the people that we interview to use their phones to record the places they are. Lots of technical challenges. So it's been a little extra hard, but it's been ultimately, worth it. We rely on listeners contributing, becoming members, and donating to be able to make this kind of long-form content.
I'm Yvette Benavides, and I'm the host of the Book Public podcast. The Book Public podcast is a podcast about books and authors. We have a really interesting pop-up book series too that features book reviews. But our podcast is mostly author interviews, and we have a weekly interview that releases each Friday.
The title of your first collection in 1992 is Another America, which for me is the perfect title perennially now, it seems like, for any work of poetry about everyday subjects. Mm-hmm. And that's not what that work was about. It seems like a title for a poetry collection for now, but then we have the equally perfect sounding, little enigmatic title, How to Fly in 10,000 Easy Lessons. And there's a series of poems in the first of the 7 sections with that subheading, with that title, How to Fly. Tell me about naming the whole collection, How to Fly.
Well, titles for me are very important as a writer. And with a novel, I usually know the title up front, right from the beginning. And the title functions as a kind of key as I'm writing to kind of unlock all the doors of this complicated novel. A collection of poetry is so different. After I pulled it all together, I thought, well, this could be named anything. There's so many different titles in the collection. So I typed up the table of contents, and I kind of passed it around to my friends. I took a poll, and I came up with many different votes, including 6 women swimming naked in the ocean. But I thought that might attract the wrong crowd.
At Book Public, we believe that books connect us, and that books are the single most essential tool for connecting us in today's world. There are so many podcasts out there, but I really think that Book Public features unique elements in that we get right to the heart of the matter, and the idea is always just to get right to the interview or right to the book review. And we realize that people's time is really precious. And so that's one of the reasons we sort of produce the show with that in mind. We just want to get straight to the book or straight to the review. Well, we're such a young podcast. We just started in July, but we do drop 2 shows a week. So I've had lots of opportunities to talk to authors. And I'm a book lover, and I think all books are miracles. So to choose a favorite's really difficult. But I will say that sometimes I have an uncanny connection to the writers, and that happened very recently with an author named Peter Orner. We realized we had so much in common about favorite books and favorite stories that it's led to other conversations around the short story, and they're usually very obscure short stories that nobody's heard about, at least nobody that I know has heard about. So that's been really, really fun to be able to connect with authors on a very human level and realize that they're just like the rest of us. I think it stands to reason that a celebration of books is just part and parcel of that whole negotiation and of that whole way of receiving news and information. I feel like Book Public offers an extra sort of way to receive news and information, but it's maybe it's a little bit more fun. Maybe there's a little bit less at stake, and maybe it's a little bit more entertaining. Something that I've found about the TPR community is that they really love books, and they are champions of the arts and of literature and also of literacy. So I feel like promoting something like a books podcast is really about promoting reading. To have a books podcast as part of a news and information outlet is fantastic, and I think that listeners from Texas Public Radio who listen in, who want reliable news and information, especially nowadays. The book industry is doing so well right now. Sales are up 6% compared to this time last year. I think people are reading more books because they're at home or they're looking for something restorative to do with their time during such a scary period of time that we're all enduring. It is restorative, it is curative, it is a solve when everything else is going awry or is so difficult. We learn something new, we're entertained, we're enlightened, and learning too how to open up our compassion. Books really do that. Books really help us cultivate our compassion, and we realize how connected we are to each other. I do hear from the authors about book tours being canceled, readings being canceled, and I feared at first that would mean that there would be far fewer people hearing about the books. And then I thought, well, that's what the podcast can do, is let people know about these books. I teach literature and creative writing, and I always feel so lucky. I feel like, man, I just have the best gig on the planet. But now I find that having this opportunity to talk about books with a different audience is a pretty good gig too. I feel very, very lucky to have this opportunity to talk about books. And it's really not about the promotion of an author, promoting one author's work or this book or that book. It really is about ideas and stories. That's really what it's all about. When I interview an author, they're not really there, to sort of say, buy this book. They're really telling even more stories when we do these interviews. Same with the book reviews. The book reviews are really, they're sort of about the books, but they're really about stories. They're really about storytelling. And really, what could be a better gig than that? Bring it to more listeners and just keep on cultivating these ideas about how to bring stories and the talents of these amazing writers that we have a chance to talk to and listen to the Texas Public Radio community. Books aren't going away in spite of technology and all the other things that pull at our attention. And I feel like Texas Public Radio really celebrates books and literature, and I feel like Book Public has such a great home at Texas Public Radio. being able to turn on a podcast like Book Public might seem like something so frivolous, but it's really not. It's really about still learning about each other, learning about the world, learning about different places, and coming to a point where we realize that we are all the same.